I'm Tiffani Bell. I'm the founder and executive director of an organization called the Human Utility. We started off as the Detroit Water Project about 4 summers ago, where we essentially pay water bills for people in Detroit and Baltimore who couldn't afford to pay their own, just through our own homegrown crowdfunding platform. We've helped about 1,000 families with their bills, either helping them avoid getting shut off or turn back on once that's happened. So,
what has been like, I'm sure there's so many, but what would be like some of your 3 most memorable stories that you've heard from the impact that you're having?
Yeah, I mean, so I think about the first story that ever like sent me over the edge and pissed me off when we first started was talking to a woman in Detroit who had been like not taking her heart medication because she was trying to stretch it out because she was trying to pay her water bill and keep her health up. Because like she has kids in the house, so if you have kids and you don't have water, they shut your water off. So people are making those kinds of trade-offs. Another story is Larry in Detroit. He's a GM retiree who had stomach cancer 2 summers ago, and he was living for 2 months in his house with no water during chemo because he owed like $400 on his water bill, and he was shut off during that. Third story is a woman who had gotten custody of her granddaughter because her son wasn't in the picture or whatnot, and someone told that she didn't have water in the house, and they came and put her 6-year-old granddaughter in foster care. And so her granddaughter's fully aware of what's going on and like, knows something's wrong, but has no idea that it's because her grandma owed $700 on a water bill. So there's those kinds of crazy stories that we all take for granted as far as like just being able to flush your toilet, but there's all these other crazy like after effects from all that, so.
Wow. So that's my favorite startup. These are the saving lives. But you have a really interesting life journey. You're a serial entrepreneur. You're a serial founder. Can you talk a little bit about, previous endeavors and just some of the lessons you've learned and the importance of thinking about resiliency as a founder and as a woman of color, taking those risks when sometimes you're walking a tightrope and there's more eyes on you?
Yeah, so the Human Utility is like the second or third, depending on what I actually count, startup that I've done. The previous one was this thing called Pencil You In a long time ago, where you could do like online scheduling or whatnot. But this is, I like to call this one the one that actually succeeded. So yeah, but like, it's different as far as people having these kind of weird expectations of you and you having like weird expectations of yourself as far as being a startup founder, being a deeply technical person beforehand, and like, just like Jazz showed on the slide before we got up here, just the idea that you having to like constantly prove your competence to people. I had an investor at one point that was talking to me about funding, but he wanted to see my GitHub profile to see if I could actually like build the thing that I told him I build. Which, stuff like that happens all the time, and you're just trying to like, just do your work. But people, even if you show them like, hey, I built this thing, there's a constant sort of, did you really do this? And it's weird. So like, that's been a big part of my career. But, as far as like resilience goes, my mom told me a long time ago, like, if this is a thing that you're gonna have to deal with. You're a woman, you're black. So if you really like are into this, it's gonna be something you have to deal with, and not like in terms of accepting it, but just like figuring out how to navigate that and then just succeeding anyway. So I kind of think about that a lot. So even if I have like some jerk off in the battery who wants to be like terrible that day, I still think about like, you're the one with the problem if you have to treat somebody that way. But like, I'm the one that's actually like changing the world and helping people, and you're just like kind of being small here. So I like think about stuff like that a lot, and it helps me out that way. So, yeah.
So thinking about investing, right? So we obviously heard from 2 VCs earlier today. Can you talk a little bit about your point of view on how do we, as those of us who are in leadership roles in tech and those of us who are investing, need to widen what we think is possible? Because you built Human Utility. You were one of very few, I think, nonprofits to go through Y Combinator. You've just been able to kind of create a marketplace for what you're doing, but I imagine it hasn't been easy.
No, it hasn't been, because again, you get these sort of stereotypes about what you actually have done and what you've accomplished and what you can. And again, we talk about like how, how few women get VC money and how few black women get VC money, and it's kind of like a crazy sort of thing. But what's your question further?
What's your thoughts on a great answer? Just wanting you to kind of share more about, how does the tech community need to pivoting what we think about what scale looks like when you're literally turning people's water back on? How do we create space for more startups like yours?
Yeah, I mean, I know, for me, I think showing success in doing this kind of work is important, and just when pretty much all of my funders are venture capitalists, which is kind of a strange quirk of the work that I do. But just trying to show them that success for us is not going to be paying the water bills of millions of people, because if we do that, we've somehow failed to some degree, because we're supposed to be making systemic change. And I like that we are funded by them, because we can show them that, yeah, there is some other impact besides we have billions of users, because Facebook has billions of users, but look what happened. Versus we have I mean, I'm not saying that to be facetious, but it's kind of there's different kinds of impact and scale. And so in our case, the goal is to change laws around water affordability, but we're using tech to do that kind of thing. And so we're about to pilot a water affordability program in Detroit, where we help a person, they pay a certain percentage of their income toward their bill, and we help through crowdfunding with the rest of it. But if we can show that to city policymakers and stuff like that, that's impactful too. And you can throw your same VC money behind that and actually say you help somebody, versus yeah, we sent 1 billion emails and we had this open rate, and that's your metric of success. So
speaking of that, you bring up an interesting point, right? So in some ways, maybe success is you're no longer relevant at some point, right? So how do you personally think about that for the mission for your organization?
Yeah, so I tell my team, we're not going to be doing this for the next 15, 20 years, because if we are, we failed some kind of way. Because I really don't want to be one of those nonprofits that profits from the problem, where people have job stability, but we didn't actually fix anything. Because there's tons of those, if you think about it. They have these huge budgets, they have these huge teams, but they've actually done nothing for people. Mm-hmm. So I kind of keep telling people on our team that I don't want to be doing this 10, 15 years from now. And again, for the pilot and the rest of everything else we do, the goal is to show success with that, and then kind of use that and those numbers and metrics to force policymakers to accept the program, and actually, even if they just copy everything and just implement it that way, at least we can say that was the impact, because the goal is not to keep doing this over and over again. So. Yeah.
So the thing I just love is, I think you're a unicorn, even though not really, right? We exist, but to many people it was oh my goodness, Black woman founder, engineer, etc. Can you talk a little bit about your journey of that transition, right, from being a contributor to being a leader, and just how do you go about thinking about that?
So I think the biggest thing I've had to think about is where is my time best spent? Because I'm an introvert. I even before this I was off in a corner somewhere by myself. And I just kind of like to sit and code. But I've had to think about, in the context of this work, how valuable is that anymore? So when we first started and the platform needed all these fixes and whatever, that was the best thing for me to be doing. Whereas right now, the best thing for me to be doing is fundraising, talking to people about the mission, engaging policymakers and stuff like that. And I have found that I've gotten rusty code-wise, but that's okay, because I can say that we talked to this council person today and this was the effect. So I've kind of think of it that way. In terms of the work, am I helping another person get their water shut on by just sitting in my house in my pajamas coding? And so the answer has become no. So I kind of had to think about it that way. What's most effective for me to be doing? And I still code, but it's not the most valuable thing anymore.
So I'm having so much fun asking her questions, and I want to open it up. We've got about 5 minutes, so does anyone, I figured there'd be a lot of questions. Why don't we take a few questions from audience? I think, Duretti, I see your hand up. Hey. You go ahead and say your question right now. I can repeat it. Yeah.
Cool. So VC funding, that's interesting. They're not really known for funding nonprofits. Are they expecting a huge ass return from you? How
Hey, thanks. Hi, I'm Durrani. Hello. So you took VC funding for human utility, and you are fundraising right now. How do you, in my experience in the Valley over the last 10 years, usually people invest because they want like a huge, like a 10x, 100x, like give me all that Skrilla. Sorry. How are you pitching human utility to them? Like, you may not get a return on this. Like, how do you convince them to give you money?
Yeah, so, I mean, the question again was like, how are you pitching this to VCs? So it's not your usual VC investment. There's no term sheet. Like, it's just like, one thing, it's a huge tax write-off for them. I'll say that out front. But then there's also just the opportunity to be able to use the skills that they have right now as far as like, metrics and like relationship building and connections and stuff that they have that, some of the same technologies that we use every day, like I can do the same thing. And so for me, some of the investors that I know I've talked to about like specifically that question, like it's a chance for them to like be impactful with stuff they do every day. So, and I think, outside the VCs, from other people I've talked to, there's a slight element of people being unfulfilled with their day jobs a little bit. So people talk about that with me, like, how can I help? Because like I basically like help people buy ads all day long, and that's not fulfilling. And I'm not making fun of anybody that does that, but like that's what people have come to me and said. So I think that's part of it. There's another like avenue for fulfillment that way. So.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Devin.
Thanks, Devin. So it's pretty, I think, straightforward question. I think the human utility, now I get it, hadn't previously heard of it, but I think maybe a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of the scope of the problem. And I'm wondering if you can share some insights on that. Like, how many people in the United States have insecure access to water and electricity, et cetera? And why is that a problem? Not why is that, I know why it's a problem, but why is it a problem here? If you can just speak to that a little bit.
Sure. So the number I use is like 41 million families are insecure as far as utilities go. So that includes electricity, gas, water, and all that sort of stuff. For water specifically, like the water rates have gone up faster than inflation since like 2000. And so in Detroit in particular, they have all this infrastructure. Like the city's footprint is bigger than what they actually need as far as like population goes, because the population in Detroit peaked in the 50s and 60s. So they have 138 square miles of pipes and stuff like that to keep up. Even though you go there's like 5 houses on a block, but they still have to keep up everything to that. And so, like if you look at a water bill for Detroit, like say it's $100, like 70 of it might be the actual like sewer bill. So it almost feels like a hidden tax where you're forced to pay for the pipes and things like that. And like, if the city has like their own assistance program, they'll give you a discount, but it's only on the water because they want you to keep paying for the pipes basically. So that's kind of what has happened. And it's the same in other communities. There's been a terrible underinvestment in infrastructure over the last few years. That's why you have bridges crumbling and like pipes bursting in different places or whatever. And it's the same there, but they're forcing people to pay for those like underinvestment years or whatnot. I mean, that's a really succinct version because I could talk all day about it, but like that's kind of what's been going on. So
we have 50 seconds left. So we have a quick question. Yes, ma'am. Oh, right there. Sorry. Thank you, Devin.
How can we help you? What's the URL?
Yeah, so with the pilot, I can say this. That's like the quickest thing. With the pilot, we're supposed to be helping 1,000 families. And so we'll need like some intake help with that because like Marie and our other customer service folks can't talk to everybody. So if you want to like help us talk to candidates and like just, do phone interviews with us, that would be an amazing thing to do. And that's like the quickest thing right now because there's like code to write and there's all this other stuff, but like that's an entry level thing. So that'd be awesome. Thanks for asking.
So Tiffani, what do you want this community to take away? What would be a message that you want to make sure people leave with?
I would say, it's real hand wavy, but like, just keep going. Because like you'll encounter a lot of like terrible people in the course of like the work that you do, and people that will doubt you and mistreat you and like try to discount you and underestimate you, but like use that as like a fuel to like do the things that you do. I mean, I love to be like underestimated and like to have some person like tell me you can't do that or you didn't do this, because I'm just like, oh, you want to see? Oh, okay.
Check my get
yeah, like I'm just like very much like that. And I think that is helpful, like to just kind of use people doubting you and like mistreating you because you're a woman or you're, you know, gay or whatever it is, trans, whatever, to just like, you know, just achieve basically. Because like, don't, you know, when I first started, I used to like, I worked on a team with all white guys at IBM, and it was like 6 or 7, and there was me. And like, there were some people that, you know, the first day that I walked in, they're like, we're gonna give you a competence test, even though I had already been hired or whatever. But like when I was at that age, I was like 18, 19, I didn't know like anything about like achieving, and like, I felt bad for that. I didn't do well in that internship. But like now, to be like, okay, let's go ahead and do this, you know. And so like, I just kind of think of it that way. Like, use those moments to like fuel yourself, to like make people look stupid, basically. Like if you're gonna doubt me, like I'm gonna show you that you had no business doing that. Like, and you're gonna stand there and like have to own it, basically. You know, I've got some stories behind stuff like that, like VCs that like, this is not going to happen, and then it happened, and they have to like eat their words. But I love moments like that, because like it, you know, yes. We wouldn't like, if you're a woman, especially a black woman or Asian woman or whatever, like you probably are extremely sharp if you're here, because you have to be. It's the whole like, you know, 2 times better to get like half or whatever. But like most women in tech are actually extremely sharper than a lot of men, because we have to be. And so like, you know, that's kind of a thing for me, but I love showing people that they were wrong.
I love this. It's like,
I really do.
You got this, and do it anyway.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Isn't Tiffani inspiring? I really hope you get to network with her. She actually is going to be around today and tomorrow, so please find her, talk with her. I just find her an endless source of inspiration and clarity. So we're going to let you go to lunch. Please remember that we will have the reading of the letter from President Obama to the tech superwomen community at about 1:45, 1:50. So enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you back here, and we'll kick off the second half of the day.
Awesome. Thank you.